So Keerthi, thanks for joining us today at ADAPT's 10th Connected Cloud and Data Centre Edge here in Sydney. And today's theme is leading modernisation whilst balancing complexity and ensuring compliance. And thinking about your role and some of the customers you're advising, what does that theme mean to you?
So in my role, I advise customers on their technology transformations at quite a broad level. But recently, there have been quite a lot more programs around cloud transformation. And I would say that there's certainly a recognition that the value is there and the aspiration is very much there. But when it comes to execution, there's really some challenges in terms of actually capturing that value. And over the last year or so, I've been talking to a number of executives, and we've been doing a survey with many of them, sitting down and really trying to understand what's been successful, what's been the big challenges that have been getting in the way. And one of the main call-outs that have come through is the criticality of unlocking the cloud talent. And cloud talent not just being about cloud engineers, but actually about the entire IT organization and uplifting your entire IT workforce in a way to be cloud capable.
Absolutely, and certainly, reflecting on some of the ADAPT research, we're seeing now that organizations have about 36% of their workloads that are in the public cloud, and that's forecast to rise to about 50% 12 months from now. And looking at some of the feedback we're getting from delegates on site today, certainly their number one challenge is getting access to that expertise to not only architect these workloads in the right way and do so in a secure and compliant way, but to your point, building up that sort of talent, that operating model, being able to get the skills, the expertise and the aptitude for getting the best value out of cloud seems to be a big challenge. And as I understand it, you have come up with a model for developing cloud proficiency. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it actually started off when I was talking to a number of the IT executives about, can you describe to me what your best cloud engineer or the best talent that you actually have that has been absolutely valuable to your cloud program looks like? In a lot of ways, I expected to hear about how proficient they were at cloud technologies and how much experience they'd had on working with cloud platforms for several years. But the more and more I spoke to them, there was actually quite a lot of cross-functional experience that was needed. The one example I will provide is one of the executives said, I was actually trying to decide between two hiring profiles. One was someone who had 30 years of networking experience, and then the other which had 8 years of experience, but had quite a diverse set of skills between infrastructure, network, application development, and a little bit of operations as well. And while I needed this person to actually play the role of helping set up the networks within my cloud environment, what I didn't need is the hyper-specialization. I didn't need that person who'd had experience across all aspects of networking technologies. What I needed was someone who could be flexible and understand the broad remit of technology. And one of the other things that we've found through surveying the types of IT roles that are going to be required in the future is that actually 96% of IT roles don't go away because of cloud. What changes is the mix of those roles and the work that they actually do. So the kind of profiles we're really looking for when we think about a great cloud engineer, someone who has 2 to 3 years of experience in doing SRE or DevOps, but someone who also has experience in IT operations, and someone who's had a product role, and actually that diverse set of skills, because that is really what is going to create that 10x productivity.
Absolutely, and I think that in the article that you've produced around this, you talk about having those M-shaped types of individuals who've got deep specialisms in various areas, but can then relate some of the complexities and the way to overcome those challenges in with the existing technology stack. And when we're thinking particularly about larger organizations who've got a complex web of legacy back-end, more modern front-end, and some middleware in between, how practical is it necessarily to build these teams? What size of team are you looking for? And what's kind of some of the key best practices when you're trying to build cohesion across that team?
Part of the answer around building those cross-functional teams is that if you have teams that are specialized in those back-end legacy systems and in those front-end platforms and in the middleware layer, the sphere of efficiency that they can bring is very much limited to that part of the process. And if you are optimizing processes that are within your remit, you're taking a very incremental approach to how you can bring improvement. But if you can look at that as an end-to-end picture, if you can look at the front-to-back architecture, if you can think about the end-to-end cycle of IT delivery, it actually requires not just can you bring these different types of engineers together, but also can you bring the engineers along with some of the shared services people that manage things like procurement and manage things like people management, and can you also bring some of the critical roles that don't necessarily play a hands-on coding role, but actually guide the technical direction of your organization as well. And it's critical for teams to come together and appreciate that there is that level of depth and hyper-specialization, but it's about problem solving across the remit and across the traditional boundaries that you had before.
So taking that sort of life cycle approach, if you like, across the portfolio, whether it's in cloud or it's in-house, thinking about the type of value that you're wanting to deliver and kind of working back from there. And it kind of made me think about how we get some of this talent. Can we crowdsource it from those other shared services roles, for example, getting that analytical skill, getting that business acumen and the critical thinking as well? But also, how can we work with external providers in a cooperative way to start to build up some of these proficiency?
So upskilling is a no-brainer. Upskilling is a no-brainer, and getting talent from within your organization is a no-brainer because of two things. One is they're half as expensive as hiring someone, and they're 3 times more likely to stay with you. And cloud talent is one of the most mobile of the tech talent that actually exists. So half of cloud engineers that we've seen in Australia have only held their position for less than 2 years. So thinking about that reality means that you need to be very pragmatic about how you get access to top talent and how you have a system in place to develop that talent. Now with system integrators, I would say that they can play a really critical role in accelerating your program, but don't underestimate the change in the relationship that you need to make that work. Too often we've seen organizations that try to outsource their cloud programs to external providers, which will never lead to value because they will never be able to cut through the organizational barriers, the process barriers, and it very easily defaults into a very simple lift and shift approach, which not only doesn't bring value, it actually destroys value because it creates more cost into your organization. Now, how does that relationship actually shift? I think there's 2 elements to it. One is having an honest conversation about their commitment. 1/3 of Australia's cloud talent is actually locked into system integrators, providers, et cetera, right? So not only are you competing for cloud talent from your competitors, you're also competing against your partners. But how committed are they to to building that talent pool within your organization and building that talent pool nationally as well? You want to hear that commitment that they're not just gobbling up the talent to sell it to you at a premium price. And then the second aspect is around your cloud leader that you deploy. Their role really needs to shift from managing a supplier for delivery to also managing that supplier because of the role that they play in the form of building your cloud capabilities and your talent within your organization.
Absolutely. And so, there's that upskilling piece, there's that need for understanding from your partners, and then recycling that talent back into the ecosystem as well. And I think, obviously we've seen some shifts in the higher education sector of late to that upskilling point. What role do you see companies playing in terms of building up that skill base in an era where maybe those 3 and 4 year degrees are becoming perhaps less relevant in a way, because not always are the graduates that come out of university always job ready, and we have to spend time to give them the skills that they need to be successful in their role?
Yeah. So I think companies play an incredibly critical role. They always have in the past, but more so now. The skilling and the learning journey, if you could place a bet on one thing to get right, it would be that. And a learning journey is very different to just a training program. Learning journey includes how are you picking the high proficient or the high potential talent? Are you giving them access to both training as well as self-learning and digital learning tools? Mm-hmm. As well as, are you giving them the right job placements and opportunities to grow that talent? Are you giving them the mentorship opportunities with the leaders within your organization? And most importantly, is this all linked back to the more formal performance and feedback cycles as well? So 90% of organizations that we've spoken to have said that they have a cloud skilling and tech talent skilling program, but only 7% have actually said that it's been effective, because it's not broad enough and it's not deep enough in terms of nurturing that talent. There is also roles that other entities and other players have a strong role to play as well. So including governments, particularly in terms of breaking down the barriers and really creating faster pathways to bringing international talent back into Australia now, as well as startups and tech companies in Australia who have quite a lot more of a sophisticated skill building program, but they also recognize that those people are highly mobile in the industry, and they have a strong role to play in recycling that talent back into the market and ensuring that they don't leave Australia and go overseas, and we lose the talent that we invest in. So I think there's a number of players that have a strong role to play here.
Absolutely. And sort of, penultimate question, we hear Adapt Research says that attracting and retaining talent is the number 2 business priority for infrastructure leaders at the moment. Unsurprisingly, given what we've spoken about so far, operational effectiveness, out of interest, and the two go together when you think about it. What role does developing the right experience for these emerging and existing experts in terms of not only retaining that talent, but also then having that flow-on effect to our more junior staff that are coming through the pipeline?
Retaining talent to me is a little bit of an insurance policy. Like, if you're going to spend the money to buy a race car, you want you've got to be willing to spend the money on the insurance as well. So if you're going to be willing to spend the money on bringing in those experts, skilling up those experts, then you need to be spending money on really listening to them and helping understand what excites them and what frustrates them in their role as well. Compensation actually came up as number 3 in terms of the reasons why people leave. The number 1 is the access to tools and frameworks and languages and the freedom to work the way that they want to. And number 2 came up as they're actually doing exciting work and they get to talk about it. The thing that stops people doing exciting work is the myriad of meetings and being involved in procurement processes and the things that get them away from coding. And many call this engineering toil. So I think that's the answer around retention. It's as simple as listening. And around actually bringing the more junior talent, like, look, the reality is that senior talent are 10 times more productive than the junior talent. But the junior talent are in abundant supply. There is no supply-demand issue there. The real issue is around that highly proficient talent. And recognizing that that proficient talent will likely leave, but if they leave, have they left behind capabilities that they've built from the junior talent to help them get to a level of proficiency where they're operating at a high level of proficiency. I think that is the really important metric to measure here.
And it's kind of like we spoke about previously, it's those moments that matter, that senior, that proficient leader, that's the legacy that they're leaving behind in a good way. And how you design those frameworks and allow for adaptation, teaming, cohesion within the team overall seems to be really important in those moments. I guess the last question I have for you is, if there was one thing that you would leave with the ADAPT community, what would it be?
I would say that don't let go of the aspiration. The aspiration is real and the opportunity is very much there, and don't compromise on the aspiration. But in thinking about your cloud transformation program, look beyond the business case, look beyond the execution approach, look beyond which cloud provider or multi-cloud strategy and which application to sequence. Actually really look at talent as the number one asset that you're going to have that is going to help your transformation be successful.